When you become a citizen of the United States, you inherit something. It's this incredibly powerful but also kind of deeply wounded thing. You inherit an experiment. And in this explainer, we're going to look at how that very experiment, specifically the American presidency, has been betrayed.
In any government, this always feels like the big question, doesn't it? Who should rule? It's what we argue about, what we debate. We get so obsessed with who gets to be in charge. But what if that's the wrong question entirely?
Because what's so fascinating is that the people who designed this whole system, they weren't trying to figure out who should rule. Not at all. I mean, think about it. They had just escaped a king. They were laser-focused on a completely different problem.
This was their question. Not who gets to rule, but how do we prevent rule? How do we make sure that no single person, no single group can ever truly have that kind of power over us again? The whole system wasn't built to celebrate power. It was built on a deep, profound, and actually pretty healthy fear of it.
So this was their whole mindset. They were obsessed, absolutely obsessed, with containing power. They knew firsthand that unchecked power is how republics die. And you can see this fear in the very words they chose.
Just take the word they picked, president. It comes from the Latin presidere, which literally means to sit at the front, to preside over a meeting. It doesn't mean to rule or to dominate. The title itself was a deliberate choice for its modesty, not its power.
And this chart really lays it out. On the left, you see what they wanted. Basically an employee, someone who works for the system, who manages things, who carries out decisions that other people made. On the right, that's everything they were afraid of. They did not want a lawmaker or a judge or some unchecked military commander. No way.
And that's the core idea here. The president was never supposed to be the CEO of America. They were designed to be an employee, working within a much bigger structure, not sitting on top of it.
This is so important to understand. The whole design places its ultimate trust in the people, through Congress, and in the law, through the courts. It absolutely does not place its trust in the personal virtue or wisdom of one single person in the executive branch.
So, how did they pull this off? Well, you can think of it like they built this constitutional box around the office. First, a limited term, so nobody gets too comfortable. Then, the constant threat of impeachment. And then, they made the office totally dependent on everyone else for money, for staff, and for the simple legality of its own actions.
Now, living inside that box was supposed to be uncomfortable. So when you see a president today getting frustrated, feeling blocked by Congress, or slowed down by the courts, that's actually the system working exactly as it was designed. That feeling of being boxed in, that discomfort, that's a feature, not a bug.
Which leads to this other brilliant design idea. They purposely built friction and delay right into the government. Why? Because they knew that history is filled with examples of republics dying because one person could make big, fast decisions for the good of the people. For the framers, speed was the enemy of freedom.
Okay, so that was the blueprint. But as the source material for this explainer argues, that original design, well, it's not the reality we live in now. The system has drifted so far from its original course that it's created the very thing the framers feared most, a massive concentration of power.
Man, that's a heavy statement, right? It's basically saying that the modern presidency isn't a symbol of our strength, but a confession of our system's weakness. So, what on earth went wrong?
And it's really important to get this straight. This isn't about blaming this president or that president. It's about the collapse of the entire structure of restraint that was supposed to keep the office in its box.
So if the president didn't just break out of the box, how did it get broken? Well, the argument is that the other institutions, the ones meant to be the walls of that box, they just crumbled. They gave up their power, leaving the president as the only major player left on the field.
So, suspect number one, Congress. It basically abdicated or gave up its responsibilities. I mean, when members are incentivized to spend hours every single day raising money for their next election, there's just no time left to actually read bills and govern. So over decades, Congress has willingly handed over its biggest constitutional powers, like declaring war and controlling the money, to the executive branch. Why? Because it's just easier than doing the hard work themselves. And then you have suspect number two, the courts. Instead of being a referee and restoring balance, the source says the courts actually sealed the deal. By deciding that unlimited money in politics is basically the same as free speech, they supercharged that fundraising machine. This neutralized intermediaries of judgment,
which is a fancy way of saying it weakened the old gatekeepers, like political parties. Now anyone with enough cash can bypass the system, freezing this entire failure into place.
And what's the result of all this? We have what's often called an imperial presidency. We blame the president for everything. The economy, gas prices, wars. Why? Because with the other branches so weak, all the power, and therefore all the blame, flows directly to that one office. And that was never, ever the design.
So what does this all mean for you, for us? Look, this knowledge isn't supposed to make you feel hopeless. It's supposed to make your responsibility as a citizen crystal clear.
And this right here is the single most important takeaway. Your oath, your loyalty is to the Constitution. It is fundamentally, radically different from an oath to a person or political party or a leader. It's a pledge to a set of ideas about limiting power.
In fact, you're pledging loyalty to all these really hard, abstract things, to limits, to restraint, to the messy, frustrating, but vital process of disagreement and shared judgment. When you accept a court ruling you hate, or when Congress blocks a president you love, you are actually upholding your oath to the box itself. Look, the bottom line is, the system doesn't run on autopilot. It doesn't survive on blind faith. It needs citizens who actually understand how it was supposed to work, who can see clearly where it's broken, and who are willing to deal with that complicated reality.
So the source really leaves us with this challenge. This betrayed experiment, it can't be repaired until it's understood again. It demands to be seen for what it is, without the myths. So the real question is, are we ready to do that? Are you ready to really listen to what it's telling us?